Hey guys, this is What If DEKU Had the Omnitrix or Found It Reboot Part 3. So, yeah, DEKU might get another slice of cake, if you know what I mean. But let's just dive right into this fanfiction. So I last left off after Izuku would have fought the big alien crab guy. I can't remember his name too much, but he was one of the bounty hunters that went after Ben in the original series. We also see that DEKU does take down Bakugo in the, combat train last episode with Ochaku. As you see that, the students are basically doing their thing as Izuku goes to school, is basically chilling as he eventually walks to the class, and actually something's different as he looks over and he sees that Minetta's seat is filled in with a different student. As people are confused and also looking at her too, as Momo's about to walk over to her and talk, as Izuku's confused, as the girl looks over to Izuku and kind of looks at him and kind of gives him a type of seductive type of look. But she looks over as she's interrupted by Momo, as Momo starts to talk to her, saying that you're a new student. As All Might walks in the class, and actually, scratch that. Azawa walks in the class and tells everybody they get ready as they're going to the USJ. They do some combat training for pretty much natural disasters and power and all sorts of other things, training their quirk for real disasters and real things that aren't villains. But what happened is these students would also ask, well, mainly Ochaku and Momo asking, what's up with the new girl and where's Mineta? As they all say Mineta wasn't the best student, but he was still here. As Ozawa says that, well, Mineta unfortunately was shown to cheat during the entry exams and my exam after a few days of them really going into detail about how he did or how he even passed. But we were shown that we did have another student that should have taken his place that was not worthy. So basically, a student that was going to take Mineta's place, but Mineta cheated. So this new student would be Rhea. Rhea would be her name. As Rhea's power will be kind of complex, but actually kind of cool. Her quirk is Absorb. Basically, her ability allows her to absorb the properties and the energy of anything she absorbs, like electricity or a physical object like a rock or a diamond or a piece of boulder or marble. Something of those lines, so you can absorb it. If it's enough of it, she can turn her whole body into it, and also morph her arms and other limbs into weapons and tools. So it's a pretty good quirk, and is actually on par, maybe even better than Kirishima's ability. So basically, the class is kind of, talking to her as she does introduce her ability, and her name is Absorption, as people just take it and kind of just go with it, but she kind of just strays away from everybody asking the specifics of what her quirk is. Now, Izuku looks at her, and she looks at Izuku as they kind of have a underlining type of attraction towards each other for some reason they can't explain. But we see that they get interrupted when Azawa tells everybody to get ready and they get their hero costumes on, as they're going to start doing, combat training. As they start and they get ready to go. Way to the USJ and the bus, as they're all starting to talk and, basically mingle with each other, as eventually Izuku's pretty much approached by Ochaku. As they start to talk a little bit, as they're interrupted by Rhea. As Rhea kind of asks Izuku if she could talk to him for a little bit, as Ochaku's kind of confused, but DEKU says that, yeah, sure, as Ochaku kind of just scoots away as she just allows him to talk a little bit, her being kind of flustered, as she's politely asked to kind of, leave them alone by Rhea, as like an undertoning type of condescending, kind of a, let's just say, I guess like a mean type of undertone of how they're talking to each other, as Izuku is kind of oblivious and naive to what's going on. As he talks to Rhea, as Rhea eventually says that maybe she can get his number or something. So they basically she starts to straight up just flirt with Izuku, like, a lot. As eventually Izuku is kind of just telling her that he's trying to sway away from the question, but he kind of is, let's just say, infatuated with her a little bit. It's like he can't seem to get his eyes off of her. But eventually they're interrupted by Aizawa, as Aizawa tells everybody to get up off their butts and let's go. So they all get up there as they're all starting to walk up in the USJ as she's still trying to talk to him, but they get interrupted by Aizawa introducing them to the 13. 13 explains to everybody that they're going to be doing training for natural disasters. This place being built to simulate natural disasters and see if your quirks can assess situations and save multiple people in situations such as these. So everybody is told basically yada yada yada, but eventually they get interrupted when Izuku looks over and he basically sees a black dot in the sky. But it fastly opens up, and villains start to pop out like freaking Skittles out of a bag, bro, taste the rainbow type shit, as literally Aizawa is telling the students to get out there and telling 13 to get them out here pronto, fast as possible. Aizawa starts to box these guys up, no difficulty, no diddy. Starting to really put his paws on him. Really start to touch these guys. Paws. But he starts to manhandle these dudes. Eventually, he gets overpowered and he eventually sees Nomu show up. Nomu shows up after 13 is easily boxed up by Kirigiri, and everybody is pretty much scattered around the USJ. Izuku opens his eyes after the huge blast of energy, knocking everybody into portals and blasting them across the map. As eventually Izuku opens his eyes as he sees basically him falling down to the water area. As we see that Froppy is going to catch him, but Deku transforms into Stinkfly as he flies around, grabs Froppy before she can hit the water since he did try to go for Izuku, as they all fly on the top of the boat, as Rhea actually does meet up with them, her using her ability to jump on top of it, giving her an extra boost of strength and agility, as she did transform into basically a floaty, or she pretty much adapted and absorbed the properties of a nearby floaty on the yacht or the boat they're on. Eventually they try to make basically a plan to try to get past the water with all these villains just circling around the boat. Eventually one of the villains try to jump on the boat as Izuku hits him with a huge blast of gunk, basically blinding him and him falling off into the water. Izuku just grabs him and says there's no real game plan and she's about to just fly over the water. Izuku grabs him and flies over the water as he eventually sees all the villains try to shoot water projectiles at them, but Rhea uses her ability and basically uses her ability to try to bounce back the projectiles as she gets hit a few times, and her ability is trying to wear her off as she does get hit a few times, giving bruises to her body. Eventually, they do land on top of a nearby building as Izuku basically tends to Rhea as Rhea says she's okay and she'll be good. Rhea gets back up and starts to wipe off her bruises, and basically her slowly starting to heal just a little bit, but it still kind of hurts a lot. As Izuku tells her that she'll be okay, and basically tells Froppy to get on his back as they're going to fly around and try to save everybody. Eventually Izuku grabs Froppy as she doesn't want to get on his back since the wings are there, so they just grab each other as they start to fly off. Eventually they fly around and try to figure out how to save everybody. We see that they start to fly around as eventually we get hit back to Rhea's story. Rhea gets back up after she kind of is okay to get back in commission as she hears a banging on the door as it's some villain trying to get her. As she grabs the floor and transforms or absorbs the concrete as she becomes a concrete basically man, or a concrete woman, as she basically starts to pummel this guy to the ground. Her going down the steps and starting to just chop kick multiple villains and start to just box them up, using her body like Juggernaut, basically just gaining a bunch of pretty much kinetic energy or momentum and just barreling towards his villains like nothing. Her eventually coming across some sort of guy that has like some sort of absorbing man type build, as he basically has a similar power to Rhea, but his ability is he can only absorb objects like rock and diamond, only those two things. So he starts to absorb rock and diamond and becomes a mixture of both. He runs towards Rhea and starts to try to box her up. Rhea starts to dodge out the way and starts to pretty much make a sword out of her arm out of concrete and basically breaks it on top of the guy's neck. As it kind of collapses as Rhea's hand molds back into her fingers as she's confused and looks down as the man basically turned half of his neck into diamonds so the concrete would just break on impact. Rhea starts to dodge out the way as she eventually gets swatted into a bin of trash cans as she gets back up and throws a trash can right at the man's forehead, disorientating the man for a quick second for Rhea to grab the man's arm, transforming or pretty much absorbing the properties of the diamond on his hand, just enough of it to give her half of her body diamond, as she pretty much chucks the man dead in the face, or well, punches him dead in his nose, knocking him out cold since his face was still concrete. So he knocks him out cold and he's out for the count as Raya runs off. Now, I did forget to mention Raya's hero costume. Her hero costume, we put up the screen right now. This is her hero costume. Pretty simple, pretty just all white with fingerless gloves so she can absorb the materials skin to skin pretty faster. Now, she was originally just going to go bare arms, but she did realize that maybe if she did run out of things to absorb, if she ever did, she basically would need to have some sort of extra layer of protection. So her basically suit is like a carbon fiber that can take a few bullet shots to scrapes to cuts, but no real stab wounds or anything like that. So yeah. So we see that she starts to run around as she starts to just carry the team on her back, transforming. I'm just going to use transforming or absorbing, either way. Transforming into some rock as she starts to just barrel towards a lot more villains. Her eventually coming across the the Nomu, as she's about to kind of try to fight him. The Nomu grabs and pretty much knocks her out of her rock transformation, and she's like completely vulnerable as the Nomu is about to crush her head, as eventually Deku steps in and is in accelerate form. Knocks the Zero Pointer off its rocker as Zero Pointer goes flying, because Zuko catched up a lot of speed because he saw it and he ran back out of the USJ, talked to the heroes to get them here as fast as possible, and he ran all the way back, gaining a lot of momentum. As the Zero Pointer, the Nomu got sent flying. We see that as Zuko gets up after he falls on the ground after kicking the Nomu, as he grabs Raya and says, "Are you okay?" As Raya says, I'm okay. As he grabs Raya and pretty much speeds her on the side of the city to a nearby recovery office, or pretty much a emergency room. As she basically says, "What are you doing?" As Deku says that, "I don't want you to get hurt, and you almost got killed by that thing." Azuku runs back as Rei is trying to grab him, but he's rushed out of the hospital, or he rushed out of the hospital or the emergency room, as he eventually finds himself back at the USJ as he starts to run a circle or a tornado or a cyclone of sorts around the Nomu. The Nomu is pretty smart thinking for something so brain dead, as it basically stomps the ground, pushing Izuku off of his rocker, him falling into a bunch of bins nearby as he gets back up, as Shigaraki's about to grab Izuku. As Izuku is grabbed by Shigaraki on the arm, as the Omnitrix uses its backup generator or backup life support to basically make sure the Omnitrix user isn't dead or dies in combat. So basically, it transforms Izuku into Ghost Freak in seconds, as Izuku takes his moment to phase through his Shigaraki's attack or quirk, as Shigaraki is confused. As Izuku flies off and basically says, "Thank you, Omnitrix," thank you, dude, as he looks at the Omnitrix's logo and flies down to the ground, phasing. As he phases underneath the Nomu and tries to go into his body and pretty much possess him, as Nomu tries to pull him out of his body and tries to fight back. Eventually, All Might pops up and basically punches the Nomu, knocking Izuku out of the Nomu's body before Izuku can shut it down. As Izuku gets back up and tells, All Might to calm down, but All Might starts to fight against the Nomu. Eventually, the fight keeps on dragging out, as eventually the Nomu seems like it's about to win. Izuku fighting back against the Nomu, as eventually with the help of Izuku and All Might, they eventually take out the Nomu as fast as possible and pretty quickly. As we see that Izuku is able to possess the Nomu just enough for All Might to land a finishing blow with taking down the Nomu. Eventually, Shigaraki finds himself get shot down by Snipe, as Kirigiri tells everybody to retreat as he grabs everybody and grabs Shigaraki and dips out of there. Shigaraki says it's not fair, but they get saved and they get dipped out of the way, as eventually the other villains and side villains are all captured, put into custody, alongside the students getting medical attention and getting a few days off. For those few days off, Izuku is walking back home as he eventually comes across Raya, actually. After the whole thing with Raya being actually in an arm cast, as she kind of just breaks past it or breaks through it the next day because she has increased healing, but in like real situations, like when she's fighting and she gets a broken bone, for the next like 2-3 days, she's dead ass out of commission and has to start healing from it. So what happened is Izuku and Rhea would have talked a little bit, as Rhea would have given him her number, saying to call me when you want, as she walks off and tells him to have a nice night. Izuku's walking off, as eventually he finds himself at somewhere completely different than he thought he would be, as somehow he just wandered off somewhere else. Izuku's confused on where and why he walked this far away from home, as he's at DEKU Beach and he's kind of, confused on why he's here. He looks over and he tries to find out where all the trash is, because he did leave a little bit of trash after he finished training here. But he would have looked over and he would have saw himself something weird happening. He would have saw a bright green light. He would have walked closer and eventually he would find himself face to face to some sort of landing site. He looks around and he tries to figure out where the landing site made or what was there, but he looks behind himself and he gets hit with a huge blast of energy and gets hit to the ground. Izuku gets back up, going for the Omnitrix, as he looks behind himself and he gets hit with another blast, him sending himself back into the water, sending him into the water, as Izuku gets out of the water and looks at the creature as they start to stand off at each other. The creature runs off and Izuku tries to follow him, but Izuku finds himself in awe as the creature is gone, nowhere to be seen. I'm gonna leave it off here, guys. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and as always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.